Okay, presentation time.
Auditor?
Yeah, the auditor's here, I believe.
Good evening. My name is Andy Cromer. I'm a CPA with HSPG, and we're the auditors for the city. And so you all should have really three documents in front of you. This is for the year ended June 30th of 22. So clearly that's 3 years ago, maybe longer than that if you go all the way back to July 1st of 22. So clearly this is some dated information, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the amounts, maybe spend a little bit more time on the process and what we found going through things. But just before I get into that, this report, the financial statements will be sent off to the state auditor's office just like it's supposed to be, and the audit opinion in here is a clean opinion or it's an unmodified, so that's what you want. That's what the state auditor is going to want to see, any bondholders. It says everything is materially correct. There is no except fors or things like that. So just know that that's good news, but it was a bit of a challenge to get there. But we did get there. So just to back up, we were engaged as auditors in June of 23. So that's even a little bit late to get started or to be engaged. And then we actually started in April of 24. So it's about 10 months later. And I'm not quite sure what happened between those two dates. In fact, I couldn't begin to tell you what happened. But we started in April, so it took about 10 months once we got started to complete the audit. I would say that process should take 3 months, maybe 4 months tops. And so just going forward, I would think that's what you would expect, and that's what we would expect. I'm talking with the city and their consultants that help them. I'm hearing that they're ready to have us start April 1st. So, April 1st next month. And so we've got you all scheduled, we've got staff ready to go. And I'm anticipating that it will go better. I mean, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. But it's a process. We ask questions, and part of that is we ask questions to the staff that's here. That staff wasn't here during the time we're auditing. And so really any answer starts off with, I don't know, so I have to go find out. And so hopefully as we get more current and get more caught up, those answers will come quicker, but it's still going to be somewhat of a process. But again, I would expect this to go much faster. So just as far as some things that we've seen, the state requires a report, and it's at the back of this, but the state requires a report that has essentially two sections. It has a section over internal control, and it has a section over compliance. And so if we have any issues with either one of those two areas, then it'll be in that report. And so we've got full of comments that deal with those two sections. And so really, if you just go back, or I can just go over them briefly with you, but just go to the very back of the report and then just go a page or two forward. And you can see those. The first comment there really is just the fact we've already discussed that it's so late, that it has no utility as far as the numbers in here at this point. The second comment, the accounts payable, really essentially it just boils down to we pick a sample of payables to test. Sometimes it's a sample, or it may just be, hey, this account increased, and so we'll pick a few disbursements from that account, whatever the case may be. But just during this testing of accounts payable, you can see our comment. We noted instances of overpayments, duplicate payments, payments made to the wrong vendor, and late payments. So really kind of the smorgasbord of anything that you could see is really in there. We also saw some cases, and this is maybe a little bit more common, and it's a little bit more common, but we also noted checks being backdated. So, I'm here today writing a check, but I'm posting it to the prior month. I'm dating the check the prior month. And so the point being, date the check the date you're sitting there writing the check. Don't ever change the date on the check. That gets us concerned for a number of reasons. Then we also noted the ability for someone to go to the bank and have a cashier's check drafted. And a cashier's check is simply a check that the bank promises to honor. The bank writes a check, as soon as they do, the bank pulls money out of your account and puts it into their own account, essentially. So when that check is cashed, the bank knows there's money there to cover that check. So an employee was able to go to the bank and have a cashier's check drafted, really, which is outside of normal. Normally you have various processes that people have to sign off to write a check. Well, if you're able just to go to the bank and have the bank write a check with just one person, then there's no independent review or approval in that process. And maybe that's more common. Maybe I've just never seen anybody do that before. Maybe lots of people could do that if they knew they could, but in any event, that needs to be addressed to where that can't happen that easily. So anyway, that's accounts payable. The third item, this is a repeat of a similar comment made in 21, that the utility billing, it's more on the what inventory do we have to sell, and then how much of that did we sell. So if you just think of water, of gallons being inventory, boxes on a shelf that you can sell, and how much do we have, how much can we sell. And so typically we like to see cities take, here's how much we produced, and compare that each month to how much did we sell. And so you will have leaks, you'll have evaporations, you have various reasons why, that are all valid, why your gallons sold will be less than what you produced. But that ratio should stay consistent over time. And over time, you learn what that ratio is, so if something gets cockeyed in 1 month, you know it instantly, and you can go investigate it in real time and make sure your billing's not messed up. That's the ultimate concern. Or maybe even we have a leak we don't know about, whatever the case may be. And so we saw that ratio made no sense at all, and in fact, you couldn't even really compare it over time because it made no sense to begin with. And so we talked with staff, and I'm somewhat hopeful this may have corrected itself with a new software implementation and things that went along with that in 23, but I don't know yet. We haven't gotten there. But there is some hope that maybe that's been corrected, but in any case, that's the way it was in 22. And then the fourth comment, the EMS billings. So, and you all, your ambulance service, it's for anyone who's ever gotten a health care bill, it's a terribly complicated process, it seems like. Way more complicated than it seems like it should be, and the ambulance service is no different. So you all contract out that actual billing to a third party. And during 22, that third party changed from vendor A to vendor B. And when that happened, the new group began their billing. They didn't put effort into collecting outstanding receivables from the prior group. And so those billings have to be worked. Maybe you submitted it to insurance carrier A, maybe it needed to be submitted to Medicare first. Or maybe you submitted it to Medicare, and then after that you have to submit it to private insurance, or whatever the case may be. It's a constant working of those receivables, and so that process really didn't happen on those old balances like it needed to. And so as a result, there was a significant drop in EMS revenue in 22. So the point here being, let's make sure if that happens again that we have procedures, or that the new group knows someone's got to be working those old receivables regardless of who prepared the bill. The fifth comment, this is really I mentioned the report on controls and compliance. This really deals with compliance. That state law says you can't have a fund with a negative balance. And you did have, the EMS fund actually had a negative balance. And so it's just against state statutes, so that's that comment. So I got a couple more things maybe to talk to you about along similar lines, but before I turn the page on this report anyway, does anyone have a question or comment on this? Or anything that I haven't gone over, anything I did go over? If not, you'll have another chance. I'll keep going here. But you will have another, it's just a one page. And we've got additional comments, and the way this works, comments in here we consider to be more serious. These actually get reported to the state auditor's office. They're not necessarily going to do anything with it, but it does go to them. This comment here, or this page here, is just for you all, and we consider this to be a step down in severity as it relates to these comments. But in this page here, we've got two additional comments. one is on bank accounts. The city has over 50 bank accounts. And so just imagine yourself trying to keep up with your own personal bank accounts and you had 50 of them. That's about what it takes for the city to do. And so not only do you have to reconcile them, but also money has to be moved between them. You have to keep up with these transfers, and sometimes it's following a bouncing ball, watching money just move from one account to the other. Sometimes it moves and then goes back to where it came from. And so it's just an inherently complicated and kind of burdensome concept, and you all get that. It's probably not as quite as easy as a fix as you might think. You might think, well, let's just close them all and put them into one. It's probably not quite that easy. You have to have your book set up to handle this. So that may take some time, but at least know that, hey, this is something we probably need to look at. The second comment there is bank collateral. This is a similar, it deals with state statute. So the state requires municipalities that when you put your money in a bank, that bank either has to insure your money with FDIC insurance, or they have to put up collateral to secure your deposits. And the whole point being, if the bank goes out of business, you're not standing in line trying to get pennies on the dollar of your deposits. So the goal is the bank goes out of business, you all receive 100% of your deposits back. And so the state requires you, the city, to make sure the bank provides collateral. It's not the bank's job to do it on their own. You guys have to make them. And then the state also says, oh, by the way, here's some certain things that the bank can use as sufficient collateral. And so they go through and they list, it can be treasury bills, things issued by the U.S. Treasury, or it can be obligations of the state, or certain obligations of other states, the way I read it anyway. And so the bank had provided some collateral, so you had sufficient collateral, but it wasn't what the state statute said you could use. And so we're in the midst of talking with the state treasurer's office now to determine, is this okay or what can we do? So we're not quite sure what the answer is yet. There may be some confusion. So anyway, between now and the next audit for 23, hopefully we'll get that resolved. So also keep in mind that clearly the 23 audit, the 24 audit, these things haven't been addressed yet, clearly, obviously. So some of these you'll see again in next year's audit. But at least we can still start getting these resolved now. So anything on either one of those two documents? The third document's the easiest one, and I'll go over that, but anything yet? Okay, so the third document, we call it a required communication letter or communication with the governing body. We are required as CPAs, as auditors, to communicate certain topics to you as the governing body. And we're required to discuss those topics, really whether there's anything to say under those topics or not. And so we've presented those topics here. There's really nothing in these bullet points. There's probably 6 maybe bullet points there. There's nothing in those bullet points that I need to spend extra time going over that we haven't already talked about. But just know that it's there if you care. So that's my report. I hope I hit everything I meant to. So before I relinquish, any questions, comments?
Yes, I've got a couple. About the bank accounts, are you able to offer some guidance on maybe how we could simplify or streamline our banking as you get through? I know you got to get through 23, 24.
Mm-hmm. So there's, yes, I can. And also, I didn't mention, but you all may know, but I should have mentioned it. So we're the CPA firm that audits. There's a separate CPA firm that helps you all during the year and also helps you get ready for audit, the Crawford & Associates. And so they can certainly help with that process. In fact, they need to help. Right. But the general answer is it's not uncommon. In fact, it's rather fairly common for a local government where you have all these funds to use a pooled bank account, to where you just have one bank account and your system is able to keep up with how much fund each account or how much cash each fund has within this one bank account. And so that's why it's a little bit of a rework of your software so it can do that and also be user-friendly and not end up with a big, with a big mess. Because that's the reason you go to separate accounts is so you don't end up with a mess. You know, you have a bunch of cash, you don't know whose it is. So that's where it takes some work, but it is very common, and I would recommend it, that you use this pooled cash, one account for all the funds.
So you just brought up a valid point about the city's deposits being protected by FDIC. That seems kind of rattling to know that maybe our lending institutions don't have enough collateral. Is that something
I'm
we
not
should be
sure-
concerned about?
Yeah, that I'm not sure. So you had sufficient collateral in numerically wise. It just was the collateral allowable under state law is the question.
Right.
So if you were just to look at the total collateral, yeah, it was a plenty.
Okay.
But was it the right kind? So, and so that's it. I mean, we can get really nitty gritty, but that's the gist of it.
Thank you.
Is it simple enough to say, that these recommendations are a things to do list for the city? And have any of them already been addressed?
Some of them have been addressed.
Okay.
They have not all been addressed. These are the 22 findings. Now, there'll be other findings, I'm sure, because the only person one person was here in 22. And I'm sure as they go into 23, some of these will be corrected. In fact, I know one of them already has been corrected in the 23 audit, but some of them will not have been corrected, and you'll get some of the same things back. I think, though, when you get to this year's audit, which is several years away, probably, hopefully not, but a year away,
Right.
I think you'll find that almost all of these have been taken care of. We
On
hope
the
to
current
have-
way we do business
I mean,
in the current year.
The gentleman mentioned the 50 accounts. They're still in existence today. It's something we're going to have to change.
Okay.
But yes, and we were aware of everything he's made, we're going to address or have addressed presently. But, you know, again, like I say, changing 50 accounts doesn't happen overnight. And it's something that we will have to get taken care of. And we have our other auditors and the people that work with us are going to help us to accomplish that end.
Thank you.
Certainly.
I want to say I appreciate all the work that you did on this, you and your firm, because I know that was a, I guess, nightmare. Is that a correct term?
I'm sorry, what?
I said it must have been a nightmare, because I know that, you know, there was a lot of stuff that happened.
There were some
Getting
challenges.
to there.
There's no
and,
doubt. There were some challenges.
The turn, you
But-
know, it's not, you're not dealing with the same staff that was on staff during that time, so a lot of, well, I'll go find it. I don't know what happened. I'll go find it, so.
It's our desire to get the 23 and 24 done this calendar year.
no.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move we approve this financial audit as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Hibblethwaite,
Yes.
Alexander,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Curtis,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Ginn. Yes. Grayson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
6B, discuss consideration of possible action to engage HSPG and Associates LLC to perform the City of Chickasha's audit services for fiscal year '23 and fiscal year '24, and authorize the mayor to execute the same.
I move we approve the engagement of HSPG and Associates LLC to perform the City of Chickasha's audit services for fiscal year '23 and fiscal year '24, and authorize the mayor to execute the same.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Alexander,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Curtis,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Ginn,
Yes.
Hibblethwaite,
Yes.
Grayson.
Yes. Item 6C, discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve ordinance 2025-04, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Chickasha, Grady County, state of Oklahoma, amending the code of ordinances, chapter 2, administration, article 5, boards and commissioners, agencies, and similar bodies, section 2-169, aviation board, to provide that the city council shall appoint 2 of its members to serve on the aviation board, providing for serviceability.
Make a motion that we approve ordinance 2025-04 as presented.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes. I'm really confused here, Mayor. We talk about the airport advisory board sometimes. Is it one and the same as what we're dealing with in this ordinance?
Yes.
Did we change the name of it? Or am I knowing the Airport Advisory Board with kind of a street name or lingo?
I believe in the ordinance, the way it was created, it's considered the aviation board. And I think, like you're saying, I think it's,
I had a lot of people concerned that this is a new board, and now that we've determined it's not a new board, the new gist of this ordinance is to say that the way we've done it in the past has been with members of the community, but now we want to make sure that there's 2 members of the council, part of the 7 on this existing board.
correct. I believe the intent was twofold. I believe it's the one to bring it more in line with the Parks and Rec board that we currently have, which is made up the exact same way, but also to increase the amount of communication, because I believe that's what's been the major, let's say, challenge with the Airport Advisory Board would be lack of communication, both up and down that line. So, I believe putting 2 members of the council on that board would help alleviate some of that lack of communication.
Okay. Darren, were you going to speak to some things about it?
Now, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think this comes before you because of a lot of things that have been happening out at the airport, and like with the other advisory boards, this is an advisory board, but for the matter of transparency, and so I think to have better communication of the council, it's better to have 2 council members that'll be sitting on the board. They can represent the council and bring that information back. I think we have a lot of growth in that area, and a lot of things may be happening in the very near future. And I just think just from an era of transparency to know what's happening and what's going to happen, recommendations that'll come for improvements to that area, it's good to have some council members that are sitting there with them and help represent the council and bring it back to the council and understand what's going on.
Has this matter gone before our current Airport Advisory Board?
Yes, they all do know what's going on here. They had an email sent to them advising them of the new ordinance, and they were all in agreement to it.
Was the vote unanimous?
Well, we didn't take a vote. It was sent by email.
That's different than doing business.
No, this is it's called the Aviation Board in our ordinances. It's not, it's an advisory board. It's not the official name is the Aviation Board.
Now we've got 3 names to confuse the citizens plus
Well,
one
like I
council
said, the way our
person.
ordinances read, it's the Aviation Board.
The Aviation Board.
Yeah. And I believe that's the way the change was written up as the Aviation Board.
Okay. The Aviation Board, since I've been on this council, has been circumvented one time in a very slap you in the face manner, of which big business was conducted at this council regarding the Airport Trust Authority that didn't even pass through our Airport Advisory Board. And I feel like just an email to them isn't proper for them to help advise us, the council. I think it's a step process that things normally, through the years I remembered, went through that advisory board and then brought to council for final say. And they may feel like they certainly were circumvented last fall in a matter, and I feel like it is at this point. So thanks for letting me speak my piece about it.
Any more discussion?
You said you emailed them. Did they respond on the email?
Yes, they didn't all respond, but several of them did respond in agreement with this. They liked the change, the ones that did respond.
Do you know how many that was?
Do what?
Do you know how many that was?
Responded? No, I sure don't.
I haven't spoke with any, though, Charlie. I mean, I don't know if you're talking or they're emailing you, but if they would involve us in that, because I had no idea of anything that you're saying as well, so they could.
I haven't been chatting with anybody there either. I served on that many years ago, enjoyable position, and thought it was of benefit to the city to have that. Or, Georgianne, are you the holder of the motion right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so.
Would there be any way we could amend the motion to approve this? Would you be willing to add some kind of language that said, if it were to actually go through that advisory board and then back to us? Could we do that in a retro way?
Charlie, I don't know if that's appropriate because they're an advisory board, not a governing body.
But they do vote on matters and make recommendations, isn't that correct?
Amongst themselves, yes. But
I
at
thought
the
the
end of
recommendations came to the city.
But it's not up to them to decide how the group is
Right,
comprised.
so if we
It's
send
up to
something to them
council.
and they say, we don't like it, we have the ultimate responsibility to go, well, we do, so we're gonna do it. You know, we don't have to act on what, as blunt as it's gonna sound, we don't have to take their advice and we don't have to act on what they recommend. It's our final say.
But nor does council have to take the advice of any commission.
Correct.
Right.
Great, the planning commission and other boards make their recommendations. But I almost feel like we were disrespecting our citizens that are serving in that capacity right now.
Charlie,
To move forward.
you make a good point. I mean, there is a function here that we send, like community development things and zoning and ordinances go through. They have to go through the planning commission first. Is that right, Rachel? I think that's how that, before we can even see it or take their advisement, it has to go through them first. Is that right?
So, but the planning commission is the governing body. So they govern over certain things, and by ordinance, they legally can make some governing decisions without city council approval. Some decisions they are required to make a recommendation on. The definition here, advisory, is a little different, like Parks and Rec and aviation. There's really to advise staff more than anything, because sometimes their recommendations come before council and sometimes they do not. Because a lot of times there's discussions that aren't a city council matter, if that makes sense.
So you're saying planning commission's set up a little bit different?
Yes, sir. And so is Board of Adjustment because they're governing board. So there's nothing the planning
Okay.
commission doesn't do unless it's an oversized building that does not come before the city council because they govern over those things and then it's set by ordinance.
Appreciate it.
Any questions?
Thank you both.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call.
Burris,
No.
Gertis,
No.
Boyd,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Ginn,
Yes.
Hebblethwaite,
Yes.
Alexander,
Yes.
Grayson.
Yes. Item 7, motion for adjournment.
So moved?
Second?
We're adjourned. I'd like to call the Chickasha Municipal Authority to order. Need a roll call, please.
Boyd,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Ginn,
Here?
Hebblethwaite,
Here.
Alexander,
Here.
Burris,
Here.
Gertis,
Here.
Grayson.
Here. Item 2, consent docket.
Make a
Would we
motion
be
that-
able to pull C and D, please, Mr. Mayor?
C and D. I'm writing that down correctly this time. So I'd entertain a motion for accepting the rest of those.
Make a motion that we accept the consent docket as presented with the exception of item C and item D.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Nelson,
Yes.
Ginn,
Abstain.
Hebblethwaite,
Yes.
Alexander,
Abstain.
Burris,
Abstain.
Gertis,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Grayson.
Yes. Item 3C, accept and ratify the financial audit for fiscal year ending June 30, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Ginn,
Yes.
Hebblethwaite,
Yes.
Alexander,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Gertis,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Grayson.
Yes. Item 3D, accept and ratify a letter of engagement with HSPG and Associates LLC to perform the City of Chickasha's audit services for fiscal year 2020, or 23 and fiscal year 24, and authorize the mayor to execute the same.
I move we accept and ratify the letter of engagement with HSPG and Associates LLC to perform the City of Chickasha's audit services for fiscal year '23 and fiscal year '24, and authorize the mayor to execute the same.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Ebblethwaite,
Yes.
Alexander,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Curtis,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Ginn,
Yes.
Grayson.
Yes. Item 4A, discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve change order number 1 for CMA 2405, sewage live station rehabilitation. Is that life or supposed to be lift station? Sewage live station
Lift.
rehabilitation, 23rd Street and Grand Avenue.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Alexander,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Curtis,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Ginn,
Yes.
Ebblethwaite,
Yes.
Grayson.
Yes. Item 5, motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned. I'd like to call the Chickasha Municipal Airport Authority to order. I'd like a roll call, please.
Boyd,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Ginn,
Here.
Ebblethwaite,
Here.
Alexander,
Here.
Burris,
Here.
Curtis,
Here.
Grayson.
Here. Item 2, consent docket.
Mayor, maybe we remove items C and D,
Okay.
consider them separately.
C and D. I would entertain
Yes,
a
sir.
motion to approve items A and B in the consent docket.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Boyd,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Ginn,
Abstain.
Ebblethwaite,
Yes.
Alexander,
Abstain.
Burris,
Abstain.
Curtis,
Yes.
Grayson.
Yes. Item 3C, accept and ratify the financial audit fiscal year ending June 30, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Nelson,
Yes.
Ginn,
Yes.
Ebblethwaite,
Yes.
Alexander,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Curtis,
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes.
Item 3D. Oh, yes. Item 3D, accept and ratify a letter of engagement with HSPG and Associates LLC to perform the City of Chickasha's audit services for fiscal year '23 and fiscal year '24, and authorize the mayor to execute the same.
I move we accept and ratify the letter of engagement with HSPG and Associates LLC to perform the City of Chickasha's audit services for fiscal year '23 and fiscal year '24, and authorize the mayor to execute the same.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Ginn,
Yes.
Ebblethwaite,
Yes.
Alexander,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Curtis,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Grayson.
Yes. Item 4A, discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve a contract with Falcon Flight for performance at the 2025 Wings and Wheels Air Show and Car Show, and authorize the chairman to execute the same.
I move we approve a contract with Falcon Flight for performance at the 2025 Wings and Wheels Air Show and Car Show, and authorize chairman to execute the same.
Second.
Discussion.
Question, Mr. Mayor. Do we know from staff, is this, did one of the previous ones we engaged bow out, or was this one just late in getting
Shay would be able to answer
on,
that.
in line, or? Thank you, Shay, for coming up.
Absolutely.
Did you hear my question about that?
Yes, no,
Okay.
everybody who's been approved previously is still planning to be at the show. This was just a late edition. We got their contract late.
The late edition.
Typically, we do get a few as we get a little bit closer to the show. This is one that our committee had requested. They've been here before. They're a great group of performers. So this is not unusual to have one that's added after the others.
Okay. Do we expect that any other unfinished business about the air show performers would come up in subsequent meetings, or we pretty much got our slate full of the venue that day, or?
It's really not, I'm really not confident saying yes or no.
Okay,
If we have the opportunity to add another performer to beef up our show or to have a better set of static displays, we definitely would love to have that opportunity. But that all kind of depends on where our fundraising is at.
I can share part of where the thought comes from. I'm glad to know that this was just a late addition. I had a citizen comment, and maybe I've not understood all along, where does the funding for this come from, in that we did hire a lot of performers in our last meeting, and they pointed out, well, in the past, the sponsorships were pretty small to sponsor the whole thing, and I know the event has grown, and it appears to be really well loved among all kinds of folks around our area. But that citizen had a valid concern, and I didn't have a good answer of, gosh, do we get outside sponsors that well exceed our expenses on these type of hirings?
We budget a certain amount in the CMAA and also in the CIA budget. And then aside from that, yes, we go fundraise all of the money that is spent outside of our budgeted amounts.
Shay, thank you.
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Hebblethwaite,
Yes.
Alexander,
Yes.
Burris,
Yes.
Gertis,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Ginn,
Yes.
Grayson.
Yes. Item 5, motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Don't forget about the special.